today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to explore why men in particular just can't seem to hit the mark with their wives. But I want you to understand that you have the feminine inside of you. And so understanding the feminine is not just about understanding your wife. It's about understanding a part of yourself. The point of view of how men think, what this means is we need to make it our linear mission to explore what it means to be relational and environmental. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. And today we're going to talk about the feminine. Now, some of you guys, when I say the feminine, hear my wife. But I want you to understand that you have the feminine inside of you. And so understanding the feminine is not just about understanding your wife. It's about understanding a part of yourselves. And what's my evidence of that? Were you not raised by women and men? Do you not have examples in your life of how to behave that are male and female? If you have those examples, you have internalized them. So inside of you is an image of operating in the world that is feminine and an image of operating in the world that is masculine. And when men and women in marriage are missing each other, it's because there is a misunderstanding on one side or both of the masculine and the feminine. And today is all about the feminine. Now, I'm going to tell you as a guy, I don't claim to be the supreme expert on this, but I am an expert on marriages and how to help men and women rebuild trust, intimacy, and create joy and prosperity in their relationship and their future. And at the heart of it is a fundamental understanding of the masculine and the feminine and how it expresses itself today. So in this series, we've been talking about all the ways that the masculine in particular, but also the feminine, finds expression in modern society and how a lot of these expressions are maladaptive to society and to our marriages, but they're based in the history of how masculine and feminine were expressed in the past. In other words, things have changed so much that many people just don't know how to show up as their masculine self or their feminine self. And that applies to men and women. Men have not fully acknowledged their feminine sides. Women have done a much better job of acknowledging their masculine, but I think both genders, or actually sexes, gender has now become a selection. Sexes let's talk about genetic sex, the way you're born, both biologies. There's a chemistry and a biology that comes with a originally born female body and a biology and chemistry that comes with the originally born masculine body. Both of those chemistry, brain, operational types haven't quite figured out what is masculinity, what is femininity, and how to express it. And how do I honor it? How do I honor it in me, both sides? And how do I honor it in my partner? And how do I interact with it? So many men, they feel frustrated. They have been problem solving. They've been making romantic gestures, but none of it seems to be received, or it doesn't seem to be enough. And the truth is that their wives experience the relationship through a different lens than men, partially because of this lack of understanding of masculine and feminine, and partially, as we talked about in the previous episode, the wiring of a brain that swims in the soup of estrogen is different than the wiring of a brain that swims in the soup of testosterone, period. And because the wiring is different, they operate differently. Probably the best way to put it would be, in recent history, there was this big AI upset. ChatGPT needs a whole lot more NVIDIA chips to run than this Chinese version, which has its own chip, uses less chips, and is just as efficient. And it's similar to that. The wiring is a little different. The output may be similar, but the wiring is different, the way it goes to the output. Now, the world is all about be, do, have. So the way that we're wired impacts the way that we are. And that's why we're exploring this. We're going to explore why emotional presence matters more than solutions. Or another way to put it would be why doing, if it's not grounded in the right emotional basis, foundation, can actually be destructive to the relationship. You can give your wife flowers, but if you're not coming from the right place, she's not going to receive it. Or she may not like flowers. It may not mean that much to her. And you'll be like, what the heck? So this disconnect between where we're coming from emotionally and what we do is what creates the disconnect in what we have in our relationship. What we want to have is an effective relationship where we're working together towards the same goal, where we're close, where we're emotionally intimate, where we're physically intimate, where our kids are thriving and happy. But what we have is this relationship where it's like, wait a minute, why isn't this working? Wait a minute. Why did we start out on the same page, but it seems like we're reading different books now? I mean, what's going on? Where we want to go with this is we want to show men in particular how to meet their wife's emotional needs without losing themselves in the process. But also women, we want you to understand why it is that your guy just keeps missing the mark. It's not that he wants to manipulate you, though he might. I mean, I'm going to be honest. It's the nature of that beast to want to fix, change, and manipulate. It's not just that, though. It's that he just doesn't get it about how you connect. And so he fails to connect with you. So I think the most essential difference is this. Men tend to operate very individually, not necessarily self-centered, though they can be. Women tend to operate more from the place of emotional connection with others. And we've talked about in this series about how that's grounded in thousands of years of survival, and that survival drives different behaviors in men and in women, that women build networks of support. Men, though they may utilize networks of support, though they may have shared goals with other men, they tend to have their individual goals first. So for a man, their individual goal is, I'm going to get enough food to feed my family. I'm going to put a shelter over my wife and children. I'm going to keep it safe. I'm going to be present for them. And if that aligns with other men's desire to do that, or even women, then they will ally with them. Whereas women will build networks of support with people who don't necessarily have the same interests and goals, but they have the shared interest of sharing resources in the future. And that's because when we were in survival mode, sometimes one family would be very successful and another family not so much. And so the not so much family would lean into the successful family. And then in another period of time, that not so much family would be successful while the previously successful family might be struggling. So the struggling family would lean into the now doing better family. And so women, by creating these networks, created a safety net, a nurturing safety net for their family. And of course, there's an interaction here between the way men operate and the way women operate. And societally, the ideal is that these two things are balanced. Now, let's go back to feminine and masculine. I've been talking about women and I've been talking about men, but what I'm really talking about is our masculine side and our feminine side. So those of you who are listeners who are in same-sex relations, and I don't know how many of them I have, but I just want to honor your come from on this. Get that even in your relationship, there will be one of you, and it may shift, by the way, even in I don't even know what we call it, straight, is that what we call it? When a man and a woman are married? In any relationship, the masculine and feminine roles may change because we have these things inside of us. As I said in the beginning, we all have masculine, we all have feminine. The tendency of brains that float in testosterone is to lean into the masculine because culturally they've been trained in it, because their brains operate in a masculine kind of way. And the tendency of a brain that floats in estrogen is to lean into the feminine because they've culturally been trained that way and because that's the natural relational aspect of that kind of brain that floats in estrogen. And we also mentioned in previous episodes that because it's been a male-dominated society up to maybe 1925 when things really started to change, women over the last 100 years have done a phenomenal job of developing their masculine side, being goal-oriented, being less relational, being competitive, kicking butt in the workplace in a way that's masculine. They've done a phenomenal job of that because in order to assert their equality in an environment that was created from a masculine mindset. They needed to embrace what? A masculine mindset. While men, not so much, because we've had it easy for thousands of years. Well, men, I'm telling you, if you want to have a marriage that works, you need to embrace that feminine side also. And those of you in same-sex marriages, masculine and feminine, someone is going to lean into the masculine more and someone's going to lean into the feminine more, because these two qualities are what make relationships work. It's what we seek out in one another. A linear way of thinking on its own is not sustainable. An environmental form of thinking on its own, is it not sustainable? Like, I'm challenging myself on this. It's sustainable, but growth is limited. I'm probably the best way to think about this is, and also from a competitive point of view, a long-term competitive point of view, it's a less effective survival technique. So environmental thinking is only an effective survival technique when all the cultures in your ecology have this thinking. Example, Europeans come to the United States of America, well, which was just a continent filled with Native Americans who were living, for the most part, fairly environmentally, fairly ecologically. Very female-driven society in some ways. Good balance between masculine and feminine. But in the end, the linear thinking of the Europeans wiped out that culture for the most part. Yeah, I don't want to get into the morality of it, and I don't want to get into the right or wrong of it. I just want to speak from a competition point of view. The linear modality was more effective in terms of survival. That's probably the best way to put it. However, the shortfall of the linear modality is, look at the freaking planet right now. Look at the ecology of the planet right now. We are continuing to toxify this planet at an unsurpassed rate. Whether you believe in global warming or not doesn't really matter. When you look at the toxins that are in our own bloodstreams now compared to 100 years ago or 200 years ago, the difference is surreal. And so the only thing that really works is a balance between that linear mindset and that ecological mindset. That's the ideal. That's what you're looking for in your marriage. Whether you're a same-sex marriage or whether you're married to someone of the opposite sex, you're looking for a balance between the masculine and the feminine. All right, so let's continue with the feminine. The feminine is grounded in connection, as we talked about earlier. The purpose of that connection is to create safety. The purpose of that connection is to build relationships where resources can be shared. The purpose of that connection is to create shared investment in a successful future, both for individually, for your family, but also as a group within the connection group. In order for that feminine side to thrive, it needs to feel safe. The reason why linear thinking was so effective in creating an emotionally environmental perspective is the linear thinking is highly protective of that mindset. The linear thinking fights off anything that's a threat to that thinking. In the ideal world, the linear side, the masculine side, is protective. The feminine side, though, is nurturing and ensures sustainability. And so when one side becomes too strong, there's an imbalance and it's unhealthy and not sustainable, regardless of which side it is. We want to understand that feminine side, guys. We want to understand it because it's inside of us. We want to understand it because for thousands of years, we've put it down, or our ancestors put it down. Like none, presumably you don't think you have, but that I'm stronger, and so I should be in charge thing is still in there. It's what we call unconscious bias. It used to show up as conscious sexism. And now, because we accept that women or femininity is the equal of masculinity, it shows up in many men and actually women also as unconscious bias. And so the mission is for us to embrace our femininity, and ladies, for you to embrace your masculinity in a way that is not grounded in bias. And you're saying to me right now, you're saying, what the hell is he talking about, unconscious bias? I don't have any of that, but I promise you, right? Look at our culture. We swim in a culture that has unconscious bias in it. And so if we're swimming and eating and breathing in this culture, we're absorbing it. And the question is, are we uprooting it or are we spreading it? Only you know for sure. Let's understand it better first. So environmental safety, the feminine side, is about emotionality. Safety is grounded in, does it feel safe? Femininity is grounded in exploring and expressing emotion in a way that feels safe. Now I am going to separate sexes. When a woman expresses anger loudly, though it can be frightening, it is not as frightening as when a man expresses it loudly, because the male body over thousands of years has been utilized for physical violence. The female body certainly capable. Let me tell you, I've experienced it, right? I had a tooth that got cracked because of female violence. Female body can certainly be physically violent, but it's still not the same as when the male body is violent, just not physically as strong, not in so many ways. And so unconsciously, we're wired to react differently to masculine anger than to feminine anger. And so when we're exploring our feminine side, I actually didn't even think about going here in this episode, but I'm going to. Guys, what we need to do is we need to learn how to express our emotions through the channel of our feminine side if we're going to connect with our wives safely. That means, what I mean by that is that typically when I'll talk about my own situation, where my own wife expresses her anger, or when my clients' wives express their anger, they have an intensity about it, but it's not scary. When the guys express it, it's scary. We need to learn to express our anger in a way that still shows that we have the emotion, but isn't scary. And so to do that, to really connect with our wives emotionally, to help them feel safer, we need to channel our emotions through our feminine side. From the point of view of how men think, what this means is we need to make it our linear mission to explore what it means to be relational and environmental. And that means that that feminine side to some extent is going to be limited by our brain structure and limited by the ability to express. But it's more like, how do I put this? It's more like we want to create a model in our mind of what it means to express emotion safely and to live that model, to wear it like acting. And you may not be a good actor. In fact, the first time you do this, you may not do it well, but the more that you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And so the reason why we're exploring femininity is, women, to help you understand when your guy is expressing himself through his masculine side, and maybe even so you can see when you're expressing yourself through your masculine side, and B, to get that safe expression of emotion is done at a level and a tone that is receivable by the other person. They identify it as anger, or they identify fear, or they identify sadness, or they identify hurt, or they identify anxiety, or any of those negative emotions that we don't like to share much. They identify it, but they identify it in a way that doesn't feel especially threatening to them. They may not be comfortable with it, but it isn't threatening. And this is what the feminine side does best. All right? Women are excellent at building community and expressing emotion in ways that the other person can receive without feeling especially threatened, though they might feel uncomfortable. Here's the other part, is the feminine side is all about processing the emotion first, thoroughly and completely. To men, it often seems like they're being over-emotional. But what you need to get about the environmental perspective is it's about deep exploration of all emotion, and then the sources that triggered those emotions. So women tend to move from the emotional to the logical. Men, for the most part, skip over the emotional. The masculine tends to skip over the emotion in order to move forward to the goal. That's not necessarily a strength, by the way. It's a great way to get things done, checkbox, but it's not a great way to get things done well in your marriage. It may work at work, I don't know, but it won't work in your marriage. I'm going to say that again. When you get things done and skim over your emotions, it won't work in your marriage in the long run. Yeah, I threw out the garbage. Yeah, I emptied the dishwasher. I hope you appreciate it. That attitude will, emptying the dishwasher and throwing out the garbage will actually get you, with that attitude, will get you criticism and unhappiness because the emotion underneath it was hostile. And here's the other thing is the feminine side, the feminine brain, the brain in estrogen recognizes emotion a lot better than the brain in testosterone. I'm like thinking about what does this mean in same-sex relationships? If two women who have brains that are floating in estrogen, regardless of whether one is masculine and the other is feminine, are super sensitive to emotions, what does that mean in terms of creating safety for them? If two men are in a relationship, same idea, they're less in tune with emotions. What does that mean for them? Like the relationship's got to be very different. All right, so let's keep moving forward. The feminine's side, its sense of security is tied to how present, engaged, and responsive their partner is. So she fends about a tough day at work, and you immediately go to fixing it, right? It makes sense to you. That person at work, you've heard that story about Tom at work 300 times now. You can't stand it anymore. You know the answer, so you give her the answer, and she just gets annoyed. She says, listen, you don't listen to me. Why don't you listen to me? You can't hear me. There you are. You've handed her the solution to this problem she's had with Tom for 3 weeks now. And she says, you're not listening. Complete miss. Because she needs to get all the emotions out about that situation before she can get to the logical side. And you, who have the masculine, who lean into your masculinity, want to fix the problem without really getting into the emotions. So those of you who lean into your masculinity, you need to lean into your feminine side when you're talking to someone who's speaking from a feminine place to receive it and to give them what they want. You never go to fixing the problem until they ask you, or you could offer, hey, you know what? I've been listening to you talk about Tom for 3 weeks, and I think I have an idea of how to approach this. Is now the right time to talk about it? And they'll say, well, let me just finish sharing my emotions first, and then we can get to that. And you let them get to it. Don't push it. Don't press it, right? Here's the thing. The masculine side is all about solving problems and moving forward, regardless of the emotional state of things. It very often ignores the emotional states of things in order to get things done and move forward. That approach appears to be manipulation to the feminine side. That approach appears to be trying to change them, trying to fix them, trying to get them to shut up. It's an interruption of the feminine side's process. And so here's something for you. If you're having this disconnect between the masculine and the feminine in your relationship, imagine we all have masculine and feminine inside of us. Imagine there must be an internal disconnect also. That means there's a part of us that's disregarding another part of us for some reason. There's an internal battle. The battle that's going on in our relationship with our partner often mirrors an internal battle. We're often acting out our internal battle. And so the reason why I'm encouraging you to understand the feminine and understand the masculine and to embrace both and learn how to channel one through the other and vice versa is that's about having balance and harmony within yourself. And I want you to get, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're in a same-sex marriage or an opposite-sex marriage, I want you to get that you can't have an effective relationship with a partner until you have that balance within yourself. You cannot fulfill the purpose of the relationship until you have a sense of your own inner balance and your own inner purpose. They go hand in hand. What we all want, men and women, is trust and safety, ultimately. We also want to get somewhere in life. We want to make sure that the security of our children is insured and that they have a better life than we did, et cetera, et cetera. But in the partnership, if there isn't trust and intimate in an emotional partnership, a lifelong commitment, if there isn't trust and intimacy, the partnership will have limited success. The reason is a partnership that isn't based in trust and intimacy and safety teaches our children to have disconnected relationships with themselves and with others. They internalize the relationship that they see their parents having. In the same way that you are experiencing a disconnect with your partner, they are internalizing the disconnect that you're having with your partner. In the same way that you internalized what your parents did, they are internalizing what their parents did. And so not only do you serve yourself by balancing your masculine and feminine, embracing both and learning to have them work together, you serve your marriage. Not only do you serve your marriage, but you serve your children. And by serving your children, guess what? You serve the world. Because when we generate children who are healed and healthier than we are, because we are healed and healthier than our parents were, we're making the world a better place. That's why I'm here, folks. That's why I do this. That's why I put this podcast out. Nobody pays me for this podcast. I don't do ads yet. One day I might. I got enough subscribers that I could. I do this because it is healing. This is the game. And healing comes through balance of masculine and feminine, not domination of one over the other. The other side of this is the masculine tends to dismiss emotion. It's what we do inside of ourselves. It's what we do in our marriage. She's upset because you didn't text when you got home late. And you respond, what's the big deal? She's not really upset about the text. She's upset that her feelings aren't being respected. You might even text at the right time. But maybe what you didn't do was say, hey, I'm changing. I need to change this. I know this is disruptive. Might be disruptive to you, right? It's when the masculine makes decisions without considering the feminine that there's a disruption in the relationship. So you could even be doing exactly what she asks you to, and she might still be upset with you because the emotion behind it is, oh, I did what you said. Emotional presence has incredible power. When we balance the masculine and the feminine, when we learn to express ourselves through our feminine sides to the feminine side of our partner, and when we express ourselves through our masculine side to the masculine side of our partner, when we can create harmony between these two sides, show that we understand both, that our mission is to be whole and complete, regardless of whether we've got a testosterone-driven brain or an estrogen-driven brain, regardless of whether we're men or women. That's when things start to crack-a-lack in the marriage. And the trick is to learn how to meet the emotional needs of the feminine without losing the masculine. What a lot of couples who come to me do, there are a lot of guys, they slip into this pattern where the guy is just they're always trying to please their wife, but they do it in a very masculine way because they don't understand where their wife is coming from. They do it in a very masculine way. They're being nice all the time. Oh, I'm so nice. Oh, yeah, I'll do this for you. Yeah, I'll take out the garbage. Yeah, I'll do this. And underneath it, they don't really want to do it. And underneath it, they don't really understand why their wife wants them to take out the garbage or what it represents to their wife. And by the way, taking out the garbage represents different things to different women. It's not about the garbage. It's about what it represents. And these guys try to be nicer and nicer and nicer, right? Because when we were dating, I bent over backwards for you, and that's what worked then. And now I'm bending over backwards for you now, kind of, but it's not working now. And the difference is when you were dating, when you were in love, there was like a connection being built, emotional connection that's totally different than being a nice guy today. And that nice guy thing, it's not appropriate for a family. Oh yeah, there are times when it's appropriate to be a nice guy. But there are times when we're embracing the masculine, where we see that something needs to shift for the well-being of our family, and being a nice guy won't shift it. I'm not talking about flipping your asshole switch. I'm talking about you suddenly realize that the community you're living in just isn't going to be right for your kids. And you turn to your partner and say, babe, we got to move. We got to move because the schools here are no good. We got to move because now that our kids are becoming more independent, they're not going to be safe. We got to move. And she's like, no, I got neighbors here. I built a community here. But this neighborhood is just wrong. And you say, listen, hon, I'm taking a stand on this. We're going to move. And I might move without you if I have to. But we really got to get moving. Or what you might say is, okay, let's put this on hold for 6 months. And over the 6 months, let's just look at both of our perspectives. Let's explore my concerns about safety And let's, I don't want to beat you over the head with this stuff, but I want you to I want you to see things the way I see things. I get that our friends are here. I get that we have community here. And couldn't we build that somewhere else? And so for 6 months, you'll explore that. In 6 months, you'll revisit it, depending on the urgency. That's about taking leadership. That's about taking leadership in a way that's emotionally sensitive. You could have said, yo, the neighborhood's not safe. We out of here. I don't care what you say. Depending on where you come from, you might not say it that way. Where I grew up, that's how we would say it. Maybe in your neighborhood, you would say, honey, I've come to a decision. This home is no longer safe for us. We need to move across town. We're picking up. I've already put the house on the market, and it doesn't matter what you say. This is what we're doing. I don't care where you grew up. It's the same message. That kind of leadership that's not considerate of the ecological concerns is going to lead to divorce. That you may, in the short run, ensure the safety of your children. And your wife wants you to lead. The feminine wants the masculine to lead. Because the feminine is ecological, it's less effective at moving forward. It wants the linear to lead, but it wants the linear to lead with the concerns of the values and the vision of the ecological in mind. It's servant leadership is a way to put it. Okay, I get it. My brain is wired to be linear. I am going to move forward with moving to another neighborhood, but we're not going to do it like that. You're right. We should wait 6 months to sell because we'll get more money, and it'll be better for the kids if we do it in the spring so that they can get into a new school. I totally understand. We're going to do it your way. And I'm going to keep driving us forward to this because you know how I am. Like once I get going, nothing will stop me. And I'm going to stop at the station of ecology every week to make sure that I'm not running over our children's toes or your feelings. And you're going to help me to be ecological. And maybe slow me down at times, or maybe you're going to notice something that speeds me up. But I'm willing to pull with you on this, to yoke myself with you. When the feminine and the masculine are yoked together and they have the same vision, the same goal, and the same values, nothing can stop them. They are what we call equally yoked. So just get this. Women don't expect men to be mind readers, but they want a partner who understands their need for connection. When men shift from trying to fix situations or the emotions of their partner to engaging with the emotions, the fix changes. When we are fully explore the emotions, the ecological with our wives, the fix changes. We have a new understanding. They help us to see things bigger. And when we bring our can-do, let's fix it attitude, we can sometimes help them to unravel emotional knots and move forward when maybe they were feeling stuck. Hey, guys, if this has been helpful to you, I'm all about helping men build trust. We are looking to build some men's groups. Go to richinrelationship.com to learn more. As I'm recording this stuff's not up on the website. My hope, desire, as a linear thinker, is that we get it up on the website by the time this episode launches. If you've been going to the website and not seeing it, reach out to me personally, Rich@RichinRelationship. Comment on this video or podcast. I will reply. In the meantime, and those of you, speaking to all humans, those of you who tend to be masculine, lean into your feminine. Those of you who tend to be feminine, lean into your masculine, because we've got these parts in us. We can do this. It's not alien territory. Men may be from Mars and women may be from Venus, but we know what it's like to be around Venus and on Venus, and we know what it's like to be on Mars and around Mars. These are not alien frickin' planets. We orbit the same sun. Have a great day and an awesome tomorrow.